Hey everyone again, my name's Dennis Baker. I'm the Business Program Director here at the Foundation. Thanks for those watching, thanks for those who are here. We got a great panel and information, so let me get started. Kate L. Raynor is an immigration lawyer who advised many of the UK equity members about American visas. Immigration issues that she's covered is through the entertainment industry, and successful working with individuals, production companies for more than 10 years. So we are grateful to have her and her team. Let's give them a hand as they come on up. Thanks.
Well, thank you guys all for coming today. I'm Kate Raynor, and I am the managing attorney at Raynor & Associates. And today I'm going to be talking to you about O1 visas.
I'm Jessica Pritikin. I'm one of the senior attorneys at Kate Raynor's office, and I'm going to be talking about the EB1 green card options.
I'm Alicia Hill. I'm another senior attorney at the office. I'll be discussing the differences between O1s and EB1s, as well as some other visa options.
Okay, and then once we finish, if anyone has questions at the end, just let us know, and it's a really small crowd. Feel free to put your hand up, and we'll take all of your questions. So the main visa that actors coming to work in the U.S. use is called the O1 visa. The O1 visa is a 3-year visa. It's a multiple entry visa, which means once you get the visa, during those 3 years, you can come in and out of the country as much as you want. It allows you to work in your field. So if you apply for an O1 visa as an actor, you'll be limited to working as an actor. You wouldn't be able to do a different occupation while you're on that visa. It can be combined with multiple occupations as long as they're within the same industry. So there's 2 types that we'll generally focus on. There's one for the film and television industry, which is probably what most of you will be interested in, and the other one is for theater, which is in the arts. So if you're going to be applying to work in the film and television industry, then you can combine 2 occupations, like say actor and stunt person, or writer, director. But you couldn't combine 2 occupations that weren't both in the film and television industry, like say actor and model wouldn't be something that you could put together. So generally we try to do 1 occupation, or if there's 2 that are related industries, then we can do them both on 1 application. Generally, it takes about 1 to 2 months to get a visa, and it can be renewed without limitations. So you'll get your first visa for 3 years, and then after that, you can continue to get them in 3-year increments, or there's also 1-year extensions that can be obtained. There's a couple different ways to get the O1 visa. It can be obtained through an employer. So if a production wants to hire you to act in their project, they can get you a visa just for their project. So that would be considered a project-specific visa. If you get that visa, you can only work for the employer that obtained the visa for you. You wouldn't be able to use it on other projects. The other way to get an O1 visa, which is the most common way for actors, is through an agent or manager. So if you want to be able to work for different productions, then you would want to go through your agent or manager. And you would ask whoever is your U.S. representative, so it has to be someone from the U.S., to serve as your petitioner for the visa. And then you would still need to show that you have work lined up here to get a visa, so you still need an employer. But by adding that layer and doing your visa through an agent or manager, you're able to work on multiple productions. That sort of leads into the next issue, which if anyone's familiar with O1s, you may have heard of the term deal memo. In order to get a visa to work in the U.S., you do have to show that you have work lined up here. That's what they refer to as a deal memo or a contract. That can be if you want a film and television visa, it can be something for a web series, for a film, for a television show, but you do have to have at least a tentative contract for work here. And as I said, the maximum visa duration is 3 years, so you want to try and show that you have work lined up for the next 3 years in order to get the full duration on your visa. If you want to apply for the O1 from within the U.S., you need to have entered on a visa. If you're here, a lot of people come from the UK on the ESTA visa waiver. If you came here on a visa waiver, you cannot change to an O1 while you're here. You have to leave the country to get your visa. So you would have to either fly up to Canada or fly back to the embassy in London to obtain the visa. If you're here already on a visa, like a student visa or a visitor visa, then you can apply for a change of status here and get the visa without leaving. The next thing I wanted to talk about is how you qualify for the visa. So there are 6 different categories to qualify for an O1 visa. The first and the third I'll talk about together, which are having leading roles in distinguished projects and leading roles for distinguished organizations. So to qualify for the visa, they want to see that you already have a history of working as an actor. So we really want to see that you've already had film and television work in your home country. So like if you've done film or television roles or even short films, student projects, but you want to show that you've had lead roles. It doesn't necessarily need to be the starring role, but it should be an important, significant role in the project. If it's obviously network television or feature film, then that shows that it's distinguished. But even if it's not, if your project has gone to film festivals or won awards or gotten great reviews, they may still consider that to be distinguished. And then as far as to show that it's a distinguished organization, they'll focus on the production company or studio or network. They'll look at things like, are there other distinguished actors in the project? Is the writer or producer distinguished? And there's a lot of different ways to show that. Another thing they'll look at is if you have press. So that's something you can really do to improve your case, is to have a good publicist and make sure that every time you do a project that you do interviews, walk the red carpet, try and make sure that your picture gets out there on promotional materials so that when you do go to apply for your visa, you can show press. If you're ever interviewed on a red carpet, you want to try and get a photo of that, or if you're interviewed on television, you can get a screen capture for that. Another thing they're looking at is if you've had either a history of commercial success or critical acclaim. So they're going to look at your projects and determine if it has either made a lot of money, like it did really well at the box office, or if it was on DVD that it sold a lot of copies, or did it get really good reviews or win awards or get selected at film festivals. So either of those 2 things can also get you a category. The other thing they're going to look for is if you've been recognized by people in your field or by organizations in your field. So if you've gotten awards, that's something they'll consider, or nominations, being nominated for even not a major award, but a lesser award, as long as it's nationally or internationally recognized, is really helpful. Or the other thing they'll consider being recognized by experts in your field is having really strong letters of recommendation. Letters of recommendation can be written by producers, directors, or acclaimed actors, basically anyone in your field. You want to try and get a combination of people that you've worked with and people that you haven't worked with. Because people that you've worked with can really talk about how important you were to the project and what a huge impact you've made, and they have personal knowledge of what your ability is. But they'll also look at letters from people who haven't worked at you as being a little bit more unbiased, and people who may know of you by your reputation or have seen your works. So I would always recommend getting a combination of both people that have worked with you and people that haven't worked with you. And then the last category is high salary. They'll look at your salary compared to other actors. So if you get paid high for projects, even if you don't always get a high rate, if you can show instances of being paid higher than the average actor, that's also something that they'll consider. So you want to just prepare by getting screen captures from all of your different projects, any promotional materials, photos, contracts, and copies of any newspaper, magazine, or online articles. Your IMDb is also important because a lot of times immigration officers will look at your IMDb. And I know in the UK it's not as big of a deal as it is here, but you want to make sure that your pictures are up there and screen captures, and that all of your projects are listed. So you want to make sure everything that's on your spotlight is also on your IMDb, so that when people look at that, they can see all the projects that you've done. Sometimes people have done less projects, but they're all listed on their IMDb, their case may look stronger. So even if you've done short films or student projects, you want to make sure those all get onto your IMDb. Once you have the visa, most employers will accept an O1 visa, but not everyone will. There's some studios and networks that don't accept them. Probably about 75 or 80% of jobs will accept someone on an agency-based O1, but there's some that will only take a green card. The question that we get asked a lot about the O1 visas is, when is the right time to get it? So one of the last things I want to focus on is, should you wait until you have a project here to go for the O1? Should you try and plan ahead through your agent or manager? So you do need to show an upcoming project, but it's always a good idea to try and get a 3-year visa through your agent or manager, because many auditions won't even look at you or allow you to audition if you don't already have a visa. A lot of breakdowns will say, if you don't have a visa, don't show up. So planning ahead will give you the best chance of actually being able to audition and get a job. Even if you do get into an audition and you don't have an O1 already, it may be that there's not enough time to move you to an initial O1, whereas if you already have one through your agent, they can either hire you with that, or even if they don't take it, they may have it more time to get a project-specific O1 because you're already on an O1 visa. So it definitely helps to plan ahead, and if you start auditioning, to already have an O1 visa. I'm going to go ahead and let Jessica talk about green cards, and then once we're all done, then I guess we'll take questions on all 3 topics.
Okay, so the green card is the EB1 Extraordinary Ability Green Card, which is going to be the most appropriate for actors. And it is very similar to the O1, except the O1 is the non-immigrant visa, and the green card allows you that legal permanent resident option if that's something you're interested in. So the major difference between the O1 and the green card is that the green card is just a much higher standard of review. So, we're looking for, have you been a series regular in a television show, or do you have leading roles in a few feature films that have maybe gone to the box office or done really well on the festival circuit, gotten awards, that kind of stuff. So the categories that Kate went over are really similar for the green card. It's just a much higher standard. So the biggest advantage to the green card is that obviously you become a legal permanent resident of the United States, which does allow you a path to citizenship eventually, if that's something that you're interested in. It is a 10-year green card, and then after 5 years, you will become eligible to apply for citizenship. So there are some additional categories where Kate mentioned that there are 6 for the O1. There are 10 categories that they look at for the green card. The most important ones I would say to focus on would be having earned a high salary in the past for your work. So that would be, your tax returns, contracts, pay stubs, that kind of stuff, showing your earnings and that you're among the highest earners in your field. The press is also really important. So, we say somewhere around 10 press articles talking about your achievements, your leading roles, and all of that for your work is also really important for the green card. Showing that your productions are commercially successful, for television shows, that's ratings; for feature films, it's box office. There are some additional categories like having made an original contribution to your field, having judged the work of others. So let's say you ever sat on a panel at a film festival and you were judging the work of other actors, something of that nature, we could use that to fulfill the judging category. Membership in professional organizations that require outstanding achievement is another additional category. So there are some, a few other things that you can provide on top of the O1 to qualify for the green card. The processing, there is a premium processing option for the green card, which would get you your final green card in about 3 to 6 months. And then without the premium processing, it's about 6 to 12 months. So it's a little bit longer of a process than the O1. There are also 2 filing options. There's a second part of the application that we call the adjustment of status, and that gets you it's the application for your actual physical green card. So the O1 kind of gets you your O1 all in the same, filing, whereas this, we file for immigration to approve your qualifications for the green card, and then you go ahead and file for the actual physical green card. It's like a little detailed, probably more complicated than you need to know right now. But the adjustment, if you're here on an O1 or you've been on a visitor visa for more than 60 days, a visitor visa, not ESTA, but like a B1, B2, if you have one of those in your passport, we can, file the adjustment with you being in the country, and the process is typically a little bit faster. If you only have an ESTA or you're not going to be in the country, we file consular processing. So there is an additional step where you have to just have a brief interview with a consulate. So it just takes a little bit longer. The O1 is not necessarily a path to a green card. So while they're very similar, and a lot of people do like to come and work on O1s first just because they're faster, it's easier to obtain, you can go straight for the green card without having obtained or worked on the O1 visa first. So if you feel like at this point, oh wow, I really do have a lot of great qualifications, I feel like I'd rather go for the green card first, that's certainly an option. I think that's it.
Me?
Yeah.
Again, I'm Alicia. I'll be talking about the differences between the O and the EB1. To start, again, to reiterate, as Jessica and Kate said, the O is typically a faster process. If you have an upcoming production that you have a specific start date for, a lot of times it's going to make more sense to do the O directly, since it'll cut your wait time down. And you'll be able to typically start work within 1 to 2 months, and if it's an immediate rush, it's possible to expedite as well. If you don't have a specific project that's upcoming and you qualify for a green card, the EB1 allows you to self-petition. You won't need an agent or employer or manager to petition for you. You can just gather the documentation and prepare the petition and petition for yourself. The other difference is where the O1 you'll have to renew every 3 years, or as long as the validity period extends. The green card, once you've established that you're at the level of an EB1 qualified candidate, you won't have to establish that again. For the O1, once the validity period is up, you'll need to renew the visa if you want to continue to work in the U.S. on an O1. So they'll look at the application, but they will, the past documentation that was submitted, but you will also have to demonstrate that you've maintained the status that you're continuing to work in the field. Whereas the EB1 petition, once you've established that you're at a level of extraordinary ability, they recognize that. So depending where you are in your career will depend on, which path to go to. The maximum amount of time on an O is 3 years. If you have documentation showing you're only working for 1 year, they'll give you 1 year. 2 years, 2 years. To get the max amount of time, you want to show documentation through deal memos that you have upcoming work for the full 3-year period. With few to none work gaps. I think that covers it for work gaps. If you have 3 different projects, maybe you have a film 1 year in 2016, you have a web series 2017, but there's 4 months downtime in between those projects, that could be an issue. We recommend having no more than 1 to 2 months max between projects for the O1. So if you don't necessarily feel like you're ready to apply for an O1 or an EB1, but you still want to come here and work in the U.S. as an actor, there is another alternative that sometimes might work and benefit you in that regard. It's the O2. It's an essential support visa, but it requires there to be a principal O1 that you are working with and alongside of, and you're providing essential support to that O1 visa holder. So if you're an actor and you have someone, a colleague or whomever that's a director per se, that is on an O1, and they need you in their film, they can't use anyone else, they can't imagine working with any other actor to make their vision come to light, then you could potentially come in on the O2 and work on that one film. As the O2, you are tied to the O1. You can't work on additional projects outside the O1's scope of their visa. You can't also be on an O2 longer than the O1 themselves is on their visa. So you are bound in that capacity as their essential support, but it does allow you to work on another production, build up your resume. So at the time you feel you're ready to apply for the O1 or green card, you're that much better off. Lastly, for actors, typically it's going to be the O1 or the O2 or the green card. However, if your intentions or interests go beyond just the scope of acting, maybe you're a producer or aspiring producer, there is a visa that's a temporary visa. It's the E2 investor visa. If you intend to start a production company here, you would need to have a substantial investment to secure the visa. We recommend for a production company at a minimum of $100,000. You would want to demonstrate that this is going to be a viable business through a 5-year business plan. This is just some options. I'm not sure how much it pertains here, but something to think about as you're preparing the next steps to go come work here.
Great. Yeah, it's just additional options for you. So generally, if you're starting out your career as an actor here, or even if you think that you're just going to be coming out here to work on projects but maintain a home in your home country, then we usually recommend an O1 visa. It's a great visa. You can work on most projects, probably like 75 to 80% of projects will allow you to use an O1 to do it. So it's a great option for you. And generally, if you're planning to make the U.S. your home long-term and you're a little bit more established in your field, then green card is a great option because it's permanent, it leads to a green card, and the nice thing is once you do have your green card, you can work on any project for any employer. There's no more restriction, and it's also no longer restricted just to your field. So like the O1, you can just work as an actor if you have it as an actor. Once you have your green card, you can work in any field. So if you want to branch out into writing or producing or even something unrelated to entertainment, that is something that you'd be able to do. Yes?
Oh, right, okay. So if you have a green card, do you have to stay, is there any restriction on the amount of time that you have to be here per year or anything like that?
Yeah, so generally you're supposed to maintain a residence in the U.S. when you're on a green card. There's a few important rules to keep in mind if you're on a green card. If you leave the U.S. for a year or more, then you abandon it. There is a process to get something called a reentry permit that lets you leave for up to 2 years without abandoning it. But if you don't obtain that before you leave and you're gone for a year, you'll abandon it. Generally, if you're out more than 6 months, then that could be considered an interruption in your continuous presence for a green card. So, I'm sorry, for a citizenship. If you're planning to apply for citizenship after 5 years, that could reset your time. But generally, if you leave the U.S. for less than 6 months at a time, that's fine. And if you leave for more than 6 months but less than 12 months, you just have to show proof that you have maintained a residence here. Like you could show ID from the state you live in, like a driver's license, a bank statement, bills, things to show that you didn't abandon your residence here. And then, figure if you're out more than 6 months but less than a year, when you come back, you may get some questions when you enter, like, why were you gone so long? And it could be, a simple answer like, I had a job abroad, I had a series that kept me out for 11 months, or I had family reasons. But as long as you're in before the end of the year, you're usually fine. And so it's fine to maintain a residence abroad and here, but you should have a permanent address here and at least reside here part-time. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to be here, Kate, because I'm an acting coach from Australia. I have many students who have used your services successfully.
Wonderful.
My question is for those who don't have any immigration currently sorted. They're just here on an ESTA or some kind of tourist visa. Legally, are they allowed to go out and audition? I know actors do, but legally, what's the rule on that?
You are absolutely allowed to audition. You're just not allowed to work.
Okay.
And that's also kind of related to another issue is, can you work on projects that are not paid? Because that's sort of like a related topic that we get asked about a lot. And generally, if it's like a student production and no one's getting paid on it, it's fine. The test we kind of use is, would a U.S. actor normally be paid for that job? So if you're on a paid production and everyone's being paid, and you would be paid if you were a U.S. citizen, they can't just not pay you and then you do the project for free and it's okay. No, that's not okay. But if it's something that would not be a paid position anyway, it's just like a volunteer or student
Right.
project, then that's a good way to get experience. But as far as auditioning, it's like interviewing for a job. It's
Sure.
totally fine, and especially since they require work to get a visa, it would make it impossible to get a visa if you weren't able to audition. And not to be too long-winded, but the other part of that is a lot of auditions won't see you unless you have the visa already. But if you can get one without a visa, then you can definitely take it.
And in terms of you talked about applying for an agency-based O1 visa where you could do two different skills. So you could do acting and writing, for example. Would that be compatible?
If they
or-
were both in film and television, and that's something that's changed recently. We used to be able to combine multiple categories, even if they weren't related to film and television. And we've done over the years many visas for like actor, model,
Right.
actor, writer. But during the past year, they've kind of changed the policies and tightened up a bit. So if it was a writer for film and television and an actor for film and television, I would feel comfortable combining them.
And how about like an actor and acting teacher? If a person did both skills?
Yes, if you're teaching film and television acting, then to me, I think we could put those
You
both
could put-
under the film and television.
Does that make the
category.
application more expensive because you're applying on behalf of two different professions, so to speak, or skill sets and combining them? Or is it just the same price? to
I mean,
do
that would definitely depend on which law firm you went with. Our firm doesn't charge additional. We just charge a flat fee for the visa. So if we combine two different categories, even though it's more work, we've never charged extra for that.
Okay.
It would cost you extra, though, because you might need additional consultations. So before you file the visa to immigration, you have to get permission from the unions, like SAG-AFTRA if you're an actor, or if you're a writer from WGA, which happens to be free. But if there's another union involved, like if it was actor-producer, then you would have to pay an additional union consultation to like the Producers Guild. But the attorney fee in our office is the same, even if we combine.
And strictly speaking, if someone's on an O1 visa, I'm actually a citizen. I got my immigration a long time ago. But if you were on a O1, you can only work as an actor. So the kind of things you hear where people are doing cash jobs, that's illegal, essentially. If we're going right by the letter of the law, that actors should only on an O1 work in acting specific work. So if they were doing, like bar jobs, so really legally they're not meant to do any of that.
That's correct. I mean, again, O1 can be for any field. You're just basically saying that you have extraordinary achievement in your field. But if you have an O1 specifically as an actor, yeah, you should not be working in
Okay.
a restaurant.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Hey, I have a question about the extension of the O1. I'm currently on a O1, but it's about to expire in June. So my question is, how far in advance should I apply for an extension, and what should the material be that I have to submit?
We usually recommend starting to think about your renewal within 6 months of your expiration. So that's usually when we'll contact our clients and say, okay, now's the time to start thinking about your renewal. You can file all the way up until your current visa expires, but you definitely want to do it a few months out. So, ideal is if you have the approval before your current visa expires. Also, it depends if you're going with a new petitioner or the same petitioner. If you're extending with the same petitioner, you can continue working for up to 240 days while your new petition, your extension is pending. But if you're going with a different petitioner, then as soon as your current visa expires, even if you filed a new one, you can't work anymore. So you want to allow, maybe 90 days or, 60 days. You just want to apply far enough in advance that you don't have a gap where you can't work.
Thank you.
Hi, I was wondering if you do the change of status from a student visa and apply for the O1 visa, how far in advance should you plan before the student visa expires?
You want to take that?
I mean, again, it's always good to plan several months out. There's a significant amount of preparation involved with preparing these visas. And additionally, if you're a student and also on OPT, if you want to continue to work without having a work gap and then take a project on your O1, you want to allow for enough time that it can process with immigration and for the preparation of the application. However, as a student, you're given a 60-day grace period from after the fact you can still apply in that time and do a change of status. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I mean, similar. We would recommend probably about 6 months ahead of time.
Hi, so just to confirm, if you were interested in working as an actor in motion picture as well as an actor in stage, on stage, you'd need to apply for 2 different visas. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic because this is really recent. Again, we've always just gotten one visa and it was used for everything. And now recently, when you apply for a film and television visa, they won't really consider your stage experience. And so we recommend separating the visas. And if you've got theater projects, doing a theater visa. I mean, generally, if you have a film and television visa, most theater projects will accept it, not on Broadway. You know, they definitely won't accept it. But yeah, I mean, the recommendation now, I would say it would be to have 2 separate visas.
Okay, fantastic.
And of course, a green card. Once you have the green card, you can do everything.
Hi, very nice meeting you. I have some friends that recommended you to me, some Brazilian actors.
Oh, nice to meet you too.
So I heard about you. In relation to the O1 visa, once you get the visa and you have to leave the country for some reason, you have to get authorization before, right?
Once the visa is approved?
Yeah.
So once a visa is approved, if you've done it as a change of status, when you leave the country, you'll need to stamp the visa before you come back into the country. And so it's interesting, you mentioned your friends are from Brazil,
Yeah.
because that's a bit of a unique situation. If you're from the UK or Australia or most countries, once you leave, you'll go to a consulate or embassy and stamp your visa. You'll get a 3-year stamp, and you can come in and out for the duration of your visa. Brazil is a little bit different. You may have heard that Brazil stamps for 3 months at a time. So if you're a citizen of Brazil and that's your only
I am.
citizenship, okay, yeah. So when you leave, you'll get a visa stamp that lasts for 3 months. That means you'll have 3 months to get back into the country with that visa stamp. Once you come in, you'll stay all the way until the end of your 3-year visa. But then if you leave again and you're still within those 3 months, you won't have to stamp again. But if you leave again after those 3 months, you'd have to go again, make another consulate appointment, stamp the visa again to re-enter.
It's just like stamp the visa, there's no other issue or no problem?
Really, it's usually not. Once you've been stamped the first time, you know, I haven't seen anyone have a problem going in subsequently and stamping it. It's just more the inconvenience of having to make the appointment and pay the fee and do the interview. But some consulates are starting to, once you've stamped a visa within a year, not make you have an interview again. So hopefully that will happen with Brazil, so that once you've had the first stamp, you can do it by mail. But as of now, you have to do an appointment every time.
One B1, B2 visa, that's the one I have here. I can't change the status right now, like I can try to apply for the one.
Yes, if you've been here at least 60 days, you can change from a B1 or a B2 to an O1 without leaving, and then you'll be given the status of 3 years. So you could just stay for 3 years without leaving, but if you leave, then you need to stamp it.
Hi, I'm currently on a OPT visa, so I'm not sure what my question is entirely, but kind of what is the best way to be productive on an OPT? Because from from my school and what I thought of with having an OPT is that I should have a year of being able to work in the field of acting, like having that permit to work for a year. Kind of, I've been in LA for like 3 weeks just now. I know like people have come without visas and you can audition without even having a visa and stuff, but the one manager I've spoken to at the moment, he's like, yeah, people aren't going to hire you and sign you with an OPT visa, which is very frustrating to hear that. So I just wanted to see what your knowledge was on OPT, because from what I've heard from different panels and different people, like it all seems to get really murky. People don't quite, some people will help you on it and some people just won't out of principle, and it can get very confusing, so.
I mean, I think OPT is, and if you want to add anything to it, but I think OPT is a great opportunity to get experience here. And in my experience, it's a good opportunity actually to get an agent or manager. So I'm surprised to hear them say that, because it's an opportunity for them to work with you for a year without having to petition for you. In fact, we just had a client that started out as a series regular on an OPT and then was able to switch it over to an O1 after. So, you know, OPT, you're allowed to work on any projects in the industry as an actor. So, I mean, it's even less restricted than an O1, and most studios and networks will hire you on an OPT unless they're not familiar with it, like the casting person isn't familiar with it. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I would just say work, work, work. You know what I mean? Get an agent or manager and start doing as many projects as you can, start getting press.
Okay, great. Thank you. That helps a lot.
I was just going to say also, you know, immigration sort of looks differently upon student work than they do professional work. So while it's great to have a lot of achievements and work under your belt as a student, I think we would also recommend trying to do as many professional projects as you can and taking advantage of that while you're on your OPT.
Hi, Kate. Hi, Jessica. Thanks for helping me with my stuff. My question is, if you're on a current O1 and you want to change your petitioner, like you want to change your agency or your manager, is that considered like a new process, or you know, how does that happen? Can I keep the petitioner that I have on my visa, but then just go with the new agency?
We definitely recommend, if you change your agent or manager, to amend your visa, and you do not need to do a new petition. We can just file an amendment and switch your visa over to your new agent or manager. If it was an employment-based petition, that's considered a material change, and you'd have to file a new petition. But if you have one through your agent or manager, then that can easily be changed.
Could you tell me a little bit more about the green card and the O1 in terms of, like, if you have more press, let's say you have like 20 publications and stuff like that, would that make a difference?
Yeah, that makes a big difference. We say, I mean, it's really varies from person to person and case to case, so it's really hard to put numbers on things. But I think as a general rule of thumb or a guide, you know, somewhere around 5-ish press articles for an O1 would probably be sufficient. Again, it's really like a big generalization. And then, yeah, 20 publications for a green card would absolutely be great. And it's best, you know, again, if the articles talk about your specific industry achievements, if they're reviews of your work, less of like the general interviews with you in your life and more about, you know, this is the great work that you've done. Yeah, and talking about your leading roles and how you've contributed to the success of your productions. Sure, yeah, all of that helps absolutely for the green card. Yeah, it's just, again, it's think about the O1 and then a little bit of a higher standard.
For the O1, you need 60 days in the country. For the green card, for the O1, you said you need 60 days being in the country to change the status, to try to change. For the green card, how long you would have to be in the country to be able to apply for the green card?
It's the same rule. So it's, yeah, we file for the second part of that green card process. We can file that application after you've been in the country for 60 days. So we like to file them, again, this is very detailed, but we like to file them separately. So we file the first part of the application, that was just your qualifications for the green card. And once immigration says yes on that, and your 60 days have passed, but before the expiration of your current visa status, we can apply for that second part, which is the adjustment. And that's the application for the physical green card. And actually, at the same time that we file that, within 60 to 90 days, you'll also get a work permit and travel authorization. So you have to stay in the country, not go anywhere, not work or do anything for 60 to 90 days, but then you get that great benefit, which is the, you know, kind of blanket work permit that allows you to work while you're waiting for your actual green card, and then you can start traveling.
Let's see if I understood. Like, I'm here for like 3 weeks now. If we can prepare to start applying, then we apply within like now, and then when we complete like 60 days, we get the second authorization. Is that it? And I don't leave the country. Would there be something like that?
I mean, we can start preparing the application, but generally we would recommend applying after the first 60 days, just because
Okay.
when you enter, it's different if you're on an O1. If you're on an O1, you can be here for one day and we'll apply for the green card. But if you're entered as a visitor, you're telling immigration that you're planning to go home in 6 months. So generally, if you apply for a green card within the first 60 days, it's almost showing that you came
came
with
with
an
intention.
intention to apply for the green card. So to avoid any, implication of that, we just wait the 60 days before we file any application for a green card.
Thank you.
So if you're the bulk of your experience and achievement is in theatre work in the UK, for example, but you're looking for an O1 visa, that would be probably the double application of theatre and film. Does that strengthen or weaken your application for the film? Do you see what I mean? The combination of the two,
absolutely.
do they take that into account?
They really are not considering theater experience when you're applying for an O1 in film and television. So we would either recommend trying to do some film and television work before you apply for an O1 for film and television, or if you have a really great career in theater and you want to make that switch over, like if you worked on West End and you have a lot of press and, or done national tours, things like that, then you can maybe just go straight to a green card. And with a green card, you can work in everything, and they would consider both film and television and theater experience, and there would be no restrictions. And anyway, working in theater, like example, if you wanted to work here in Broadway, it's very hard to work on an O1. Most productions won't take an O1 like they will for film and television. So for most of our clients that are very established in the theater industry, they end up going straight for a green card.
And is there a difference in the cost between the application for the fees, your fees, for example, and the also, you may have already said this, the cost of applying for the green card or the O1? Is it more expensive to try and do the green card?
Yeah, the green card is about double the cost of an O1. So if you're going to renew your O1 2 times, then it's almost the same as just going straight for a green card.
Okay, thanks.
The people assessing the application are often not particularly educated from our industry, are they? They're often bureaucrats, etc. The reason I'm saying that is because when I did my application for a green card, in terms of the press that you've spoken about, we had a lot of press, but a lot of the people assessing don't know, for example, the local newspapers in Sydney, Australia. So someone could do something, an article about them in the equivalent of something here like the Los Feliz Ledger. But obviously if the newspapers are more prominent, like it's got The Australian, which is our national newspaper, or the Sydney Morning Herald, that's going to carry more weight. Is that correct? That you're trying to have articles from the most prestigious newspapers and publications and media, but if an actor is starting out and they don't have access to getting an article in our national newspaper, even something like an article in the Los Feliz Ledger will suffice. Any press, you're saying, but obviously the more prestigious, the better.
We're required to give circulation figures and information about the publication and who it reaches, and if it's local or regional or national or international. So that is information they request. Of course, some press is better than no press.
Right.
So I'd rather have something from the Los Feliz Ledger than nothing.
Yes.
But it's certainly going to carry a lot more weight to have something that's national or international, that's widely circulated. The regulations require it to be major media. So I think that the officer could make an argument that that's not major media. But
Right.
again, I think you're right. There's a big variation from officer to officer, and it's very subjective. And so while one might be a little more savvy and say, oh, that's not a distinguished publication or that's not a major media, and not give it any weight, another one might flip through the articles quickly and say, oh, he's got a bunch of articles, looks good, check off that box. So
Sure.
that's why sometimes you'll see, someone get a visa that may have less than someone who maybe didn't get a visa. It's just, officer to officer, and it's extremely subjective.
How about things like on-set photographs taken with prominent actors, even though they're not from an article? if you take a picture with Dennis Quaid or a picture with Kate Blanchett when you worked, for 2 days on a shoot, and you put that as part of your application. That's what we did in mine. And so the assessors were flipping through lots of on-set photographs with famous people. Does that help? It seemed to help ours, but I don't know if in your experience it does.
In my experience, it is helpful. I mean, I wouldn't consider that to be press, but I certainly think, having those type of pictures can create an image of you as a prominent actor, having pictures on the scene. I think it's important. They're looking at lots of applications and flipping through pages and pages of text. And if they happen to flip through a page with an actor that they know of or like, I mean, that's going to make, them take a second look or, come back awake and pay attention. So we definitely do include those types of pictures.
Thank you.
So if you have work lined up and, like, say, a feature film that requires a special talent and you have a lot of press with you, like, being recognized in that field, in that talent, but that's, like, not related to the entertainment industry, but that's what the film is about, would those articles help with the application?
Well, I can take it. I mean, if you guys jump in, I don't want to take all the questions, but basically, it would depend if you're doing an O1 as a person with this extraordinary talent. So say it's like a film about horse riding and you're, a distinguished horse rider. You could get a visa as a, famous, stunt person or horse rider or something like that. But generally, if the O1 is as an actor, then they might not take other talents, like if you speak a specific language or something like that, they won't take it into consideration. But certainly, if you're doing something else in a film, if you want, you can tell us specifically what it is. But
Yeah, I specifically have a tennis film lined up, and prior to becoming an actor, I was a professional tennis player, so I have a lot of press covering that aspect of my life. So building up my application, I was wondering if that would be relevant.
I mean, I would say depending on the level you achieved playing tennis, it wouldn't necessarily apply to your work as an actor or a visa for an actor. But if you are at a certain level playing tennis, you could apply for a green card as a tennis player if you're demonstrating that you're going to continue to work in the field of tennis. And then once you have your work permit, you can continue working in tennis, but you can act as well.
Okay, but if it's like for a film, then it wouldn't be relevant?
I
For an
suppose the
actor,
question would be if you needed to be a professional tennis player for that job, meaning if it was an acting role that, and you've got a visa as an actor, then certainly you could play tennis in the film. If you had a visa being extraordinary in the field of tennis, I would not consider that to cover an acting role in the film. So I would say that if you had an acting visa, you would be able to portray a tennis player in a movie. If you had a tennis visa to come here and play tennis, if you were playing tennis in the background, or making an appearance, then that might be okay, but not to act in a whole film, even if your character were a tennis player. No, I wouldn't say that would cover it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, of the 6 categories for the O1 that you mentioned, how many of those do you have to like tick every single box, all 6 of them, or is it like 4 or 3 or
3. You
3?
have to meet 3.
Okay, thanks.
I just had a question. I just wanted to clarify something about the green card. I've had 2 friends who have applied or entered the green card lottery, and I've heard lots of different stories about it. I wondered whether or not you could confirm whether that's a legit. If someone does apply for the green card lottery and is successful, whether that means that that green card is the equivalent to any of the other green cards that others might apply for through various other methods.
Yeah, a green card is a green card.
Right.
So if you get it through marriage, if you get it through the green card lottery, if you get it through work, it's just a regular old green card.
Okay.
So the benefit is different in terms of when you can apply for citizenship. But it's the same.
Same. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's a great program, and it's not expensive. We always recommend if people are on an O1 and they are interested in a green card, but they don't qualify, we encourage people to apply for it. It's a great program.
Thank you. Does the E2 visa, the money needs to come outside from outside the country, or can be your investment with someone from here, the money being the U.S.?
It has to be your money that you're investing. So we've had people that invest from an account here, but you do need to trace back the source of the funds and show that it's,
Related to
all
me.
obtained from a legitimate means.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just ask about the OPT visa that this lady mentioned? Can you just briefly explain that? Because that's the first time I've heard that, actually, the OPT visa.
It stands for Optional Practical Training, and it's basically a 1 year, well, if you're on an F1, which is an academic student visa, then generally either after 1 year of school or when you complete your program, you get a 1 year work permit. It's really great. It's to practice what you learn. So whether if you're in an acting school, that's acting, or film school, anything in the film industry. And it's really pretty unrestricted as long as you're working in the field of your study. And usually the schools will do it for their students. So it's not even something that you would need an attorney to do. They'll go ahead and apply for you for a work permit. And generally it's for 1 year if you're on an F1 academic student visa. And if you're on an M1, which is a vocational student visa, which is what a lot of the acting schools are, then it's going to be shorter.
And it's restricted to only doing student productions. You couldn't do anything professionally, nothing SAG or AFTRA.
No,
you
can do professional work.
On a
Yes, you
OPT?
can- Yes,
Wow.
absolutely. You can do professional projects.
Fantastic. But it's a year in duration only.
If you're on an F1, yeah, it's for a year.
Okay, thank you. So many visas. You're amazing to remember all those.
Okay. I have a couple of questions I think that people gave through online, so I don't know if one of you want to take one, and I can take the first one. It says, I am currently on an ESTA and will have to return back to UK to renew my 90 days. If I submit my application when I return to LA, can I schedule my interview in Canada, or will I have to return back to the UK to be interviewed at the US Embassy in London? That's a really good question, because a lot of times people live really far away, like in the UK or in Australia, and they don't want to, if they're here on ESTA, fly all the way home to stamp the visa. Generally, the law encourages you to apply for your first O1 visa stamp in your home country. However, if you're not able to do that, or you're in a situation where you need the visa more quickly and you don't have time to return to your home country, many of our clients do fly up to Canada and stamp their visa there. The only consulate that I know of that doesn't stamp visas for non-Canadian citizens is Montreal. So you wouldn't be able to stamp in Montreal, but there's lots of other consulates there, like Vancouver, Ottawa, Calgary, or Toronto. And those are all great places to stamp your visa without having to fly all the way back home. And then we have one more question. Do one of you guys want to take it?
I'm applying for a O1 visa and have an agent in LA sponsoring me. I've heard there is a higher success rate to submit in Vermont. Would I need to find a sponsor there, or can I just submit in California? Would the work be limited to me being an actor on the project, or can I use the O1 for playing other roles? Okay, well, the first part of the question is where to file. This is a question that comes up routinely, and it's based upon where your petitioner is located. If you have a West Coast petitioner, you'll be filing in California, and if you have an East Coast petitioner, you'll be filing in Vermont. A lot of times there will be one service center that is more lenient or preferable depending on any given time. It usually operates a bit like a pendulum, so you can't always say with any sort of authority which one is going to be the best at any given time, and it's always just a good idea to pick the best sponsor for you, pick the one that's going to work with you, represent you, etc. And if you qualify for the O1, the officer will recognize that no matter what side of the country that you're on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just address that too, because a lot of people ask, should I file in Vermont? And so there's kind of, I don't want to say rumor going around that it's better to file from the East Coast. Where that comes from is a couple of years back, there was sort of this period of time where Vermont was really approving everyone for O1s. And so sometimes you'll probably meet people that say, how did that person get an O1? So there was a period of time where Vermont was much, much more lenient than California. I would not say that's the case anymore. So that's kind of an outdated suggestion. If you had gotten that suggestion maybe 3 years ago, oh, you should make sure to find a petitioner on the East Coast so you can file in Vermont. I may have agreed that that would make the difference on whether your case would get approved or not. I don't think that that's the case anymore. I agree exactly with what Alicia said, that it's a pendulum, and you know, for a while, Vermont was really great, and that's why so many people were recommending filing there.
Just to address the person's second question about being on an agent-based petition, and would the work be limited to being an actor on that one project? You submit a series of upcoming works with an agency-based petition. You are not limited to those specific projects. As we mentioned before, you can work on those projects and others that come up during the validity period of your visa.
Just going back to the Vermont thing, if your agent here has West Coast and East Coast office, and you're kind of represented on both sides, as it were, then where should you file?
I, to be honest, actually prefer California right now, but again,
So it
I think
doesn't
that's
make a difference,
discussion
really?
that, well, I think at times it does. I think that's really a conversation that you would have with your attorney, you know, and you could decide together that your attorney could, especially if it's a firm like ours where we file hundreds and hundreds of O1s, we can see trends right away. So if we see a trend, a negative trend or positive trend, that's something we can tell you. So if you have a choice where to file, then it's definitely, you want to take all the factors into consideration to give your application the very best chance of approval. And, you know, I mean, certainly there's cases that no matter where you file them would get approved. But, you know, if it's a more borderline case, sometimes, you know, filing in the best jurisdiction can give you that extra little chance of getting the approval. So I do think it's legitimate to take that into consideration. But right now, I'm actually preferring California. It's faster, it's more efficient. So, you know, you may ask me that in a month from now, and I may change my mind.
And I think you have covered this, but other than Broadway with an O1, like if you got a job in New York, you could just go over and do that job on your O1?
Legally, if it's through your agent or manager, you can, and most employers will accept it. They're supposed to, but there are some that don't. But I'd say the majority of work, you can definitely have a successful career here as an actor on an O1.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Well, if there's no more questions, then thank you all for coming today. And for those of you that are watching us, thank you for tuning in. And we really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. And if there's anything else you think of that you didn't ask us today, you know, our firm is Raynor and Associates. Our website is just www.kateRaynor.com. And there's emails on there that you can reach us, and we do offer free consultations if anyone has any questions. So thank you all for coming.